Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here and see all these excited faces in the audience. Actually, I'd like to find out, if you'd raise your hands, if any of you are involved directly or indirectly in the procurement or negotiation of telecom services in your departments. Okay, there's a few. Splendid, excellent. Because telecoms is one of those things that touches everybody. I thought of the title here, if you don't want to know the score, look away now. This is something that you hear the newsreader say just before the football comes on normally, because they don't want to spoil your enjoyment of watching the highlights of your team get disastrously beaten, which happens to me a lot. But in this context, it was because of the score that came from the report back in October from Sir Philip Green, especially as it relates to IT and telecoms. And it wasn't the most attractive score you can imagine. It seemed to be telco companies 650 million, government nil. And we thought, okay, it's about time we had a chat about this, and this is why we've sponsored this event. This is why I've come along to provoke some thought, I hope, in terms of the way we look at the way we manage telecoms and what we can do about this, because this is actually an enormous opportunity. So what do we know? Well, as I just said, Sir Philip Green looked at government spending, produced this report after some considerable time and analysis, and saw there was somewhere between 600 and 700 million worth of savings he predicted on a 2 billion spend in telecoms. It's a big number. Now, a lot of people that I know have said to me, well, you know, what does Sir Philip Green know about telecoms? You know, does he know his ADSL from his MPLS? But at the end of the day, even if he's, you know, twice as much as it really is, it's still a huge number. It's still an enormous amount. So what's actually been going on since then? And as we just heard, the Cabinet Office has signed a number of these memoranda of understanding with a number of the key suppliers, so BT Cable and Wireless, HP, Siemens, and so on and so on. Okay, now, the opinion on the value of memoranda of understanding, you know, varies widely. There seems to be three camps that I hear from. There's the very enthusiastic ones that I suppose the Cabinet Office that say we've beaten down the vendors. They've agreed to do their very best. You know, they've signed this legal document. I have it here in my hand, and it is effectively a letter of intent. They are going to try their best to help us reduce our costs. Okay. Then, so that's camp one. I'll ask you which one you fall into in a second. Then there's the middle ground, the people that say, well, you know, it's better than nothing. You know, we've got to do something. It's better than nothing. We're trying here. But it seems to be taking a long time for the memorandum of understanding to actually do anything. They always seem to be delaying it. And when we look at this, we think, well, is it really in their interests to reduce the cost? Because they see the government as a cash cow. It's very lucrative business for them. Why are they going to rush towards cutting this business? Okay. And then, so that's camp two. And then you get the more cynical, if you like, ones that say, well, you know, this is the contractual form of a snooze button on a smoke alarm. Basically, it's not wonderfully practical. It's, you know, you may as well rename Downing Street Economy Drive for the amount of good that it's going to do. So these are the three sort of positions we hear. So can you put your hands up if you think you're in camp one? No Cabinet Office people here. What about camp two in the middle, where you think that it's better than nothing? But okay, there's one or two. And how many cynics do we have? Yeah, okay, my type of audience.
Quite a lot of don't knows.
Quite a lot of don't knows too. Okay.
Don't know if one's cynical.
So the question is, you know, what happens now? We've spotted this big problem. What are we going to do about it? Because you won't actually change anything unless you do something about it. So we need to now think about how can we attack this problem, and we need to understand what the problem is. And this is very important. So Why focus on telecoms expenses particularly? Well, I can only focus on that because this is my area of expertise, but why should we be focusing on telecoms expense management? Because it touches everything we do. It's not just phones on desks, it's all these other technologies. It's an alphabet soup of different terms here. So, and it's also a very special case for procurement. It's a really unusual utility. Can you think of any other utility where the atomic price of the elements of the utility are getting cheaper every year? You know, if you think about other utilities like electricity and gas and petrol and whatever else that you consume, they're all going up in price, you know, unit by unit. So in that sense, it's a good idea if you can fix the price of a contract for a long time. Because, you know, if I could get last year's gas prices and fix it for 5 years, that'd be brilliant. In 5 years' time, I'd be quids in. With telecoms, it's the other way round. With telecoms, you've got to think about this as, I don't want to have a long-term agreement because next year, some boffin at the vendor is going to come up with a new arrangement of the alphabet, come up with some new technology which is going to run twice as fast for half the cost. And I'm going to be stuck in my old technology with my fixed price. So it's a very different way of thinking. And it's not like, even though it's getting cheaper, you're using more of it. You use more of it faster than it gets cheaper. So your costs still actually go up. And the sort of ways in which you do that is things like e-services, you know, direct.gov and all these other things that are coming online. We're moving away from people sending in letters in the post and asking for stuff. They do it all online now. There's more and more databases with more communications lines between them, more networking going on. And because of the squeeze, you know, there's less travelling, so we're using telecoms to replace expensive things with less expensive things. So let's use video conferencing, you know, rather than go to Edinburgh or whatever. So TEM is telecom expense management. Sorry, I should have introduced that earlier. Is these days regarded as a best practice. And when I say a best practice, this is a definition made by the independent analysts like Forrester and Gartner and Meta Group and these sort of people. Okay. It's basically common sense, most of it. You know, I'm going to sort of talk about the ways in which we approach using it, but most of it is common sense. It's just sensible things to do. And in the current situation, this is an enormous opportunity for heroic savings. It's so easy to find savings in telecoms, and I'll explain why that is in just a second. First of all, I want to quickly just touch on, you know, paint a picture of the background we face at the moment. We've heard about, you know, cuts. You know, I've said possible cuts here, but there'll be cuts. And they may affect departmental budgets, they may affect staffing levels. And so in the end of the day, here we are under a lot of pressure, being asked to do more with less. There are lots of technological challenges. As I was just saying, every year, every day almost, there's a new plan comes out, a new way of pricing services, new technologies which are available for connecting things together. Everybody wants the latest devices. And it's quite easy to become telecoms fashion victims, taking on new technologies and not understanding the hidden costs that are in there. Okay. Also, you've got organisational challenges. You know, we've just heard both previous speakers talk about this. There's decentralisation. You can't wave a magic wand and change that. But what you can do is you can put in ubiquitous systems that allow people to share information and get more leverage from the size of the overall organisation when you're talking to the vendor supplying you the services. It's exactly the same in the private sector. Don't think you're unique here in that having cuts, having budget squeezed, you know, having all these challenges. This happens to all the companies we provide telecoms expense management to.